Good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you to the Wednesday, March 26th, Placer County Transportation Planning Agency Commission meeting. And we'll start with a flag salute. And I think, Mr. Trevas, would you do this honor?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And will the clerk please call the roll?
Hesh. Hahn.
Here.
Nader. Nesbitt. Here. Rohan.
Here.
Russland.
Here.
Trevas. Here. Yukovich. Here. Euler.
Here.
Thank you. Now ask for approval of the meetings of the February 26, 2014.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the February 26, 2014 meeting. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Hesh. Holmes.
Yes.
Nader. Nesbitt. Rohan.
Yes.
Russland.
Yes.
Trevas.
Yes.
Yukovich. Euler.
Thank you. I trust everybody's had a chance to review the agenda. Is there anything on the agenda that needs some kind of a discussion or anything? That's okay. Thank you. And public comment. Now is the time for anyone in the public that wishes to address the commission on any item that's not on the agenda. We'll give you 3 minutes apiece if you'll come forward and state your name and your address. Seeing no takers, we will close the public comment session and move to the consent calendar. Are there any items on the consent calendar that board members wish to pull off for discussion, or is there anyone in the audience that has an issue on the consent calendar that needs to be pulled off for discussion? Seeing none, I will entertain
Motion to approve.
Motion to
Second.
It's been set in motion and second to approve the consent calendar. Will the clerk please call the roll? Yes.
Nesbitt. Rohan.
Yes.
Russland.
Yes.
Trevas.
Yes.
Yukovich. Euler.
All right, thank you. We'll now adjourn as the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency and convene as the Western Placer Consolidated Transportation Services Agency. And we have another consent calendar. Are there any items on the consent calendar that any board members wish to pull off for discussion? No. Anyone in the audience? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar for the Western Placer Consolidated Transportation Services Agency. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Holmes.
Yes.
Nesbitt.
Yes.
Russland.
Yes.
Trevas. Yukovich.
Okay. So now we adjourn as the Western Placer Consolidated Transportation Services Agency and convene as the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency, and we will have a presentation from the I-80 Vertical Clearance Project.
Yes, I'd like to introduce Rochelle Jenkins from Caltrans District 3. She is with their Public Information Department, and she has a team of folks with her that are working on the I-80 Vertical Clearance Project that will be beginning in this spring. And Rochelle, take it away.
Thank you, Celia. Good morning, all. Some of you I recognize and some I haven't had the pleasure to meet yet. I'm Rochelle Jenkins. I'm the Public Information Officer for your area. We are going to be doing a vertical clearance project in South Placer County. And I wanted to we're giving forewarning to the public, and we like to start with our electeds first. So you have warning, so when your constituent starts calling, you're well aware and fully informed of what we plan on doing, how we plan on lessening the impacts, and making sure everybody's nicely informed. We have a campaign outreach program for this construction project. It's called Raise 80, and it has a website, raise80.com, where it is going to be the one-stop shop for all the information regarding this project, where people can actually go and sign up for email blasts and be the very first people to know what's going on and be completely in the know. Project details. We have 9 structures that do not meet today's standards for vertical clearance, which is 16 feet 6 inches. So we are going to raise 6 of the structures, using the pre-existing bridge. We're going to actually jack them up. We're going to cut the supports. Ed Yarborough, our construction safety supervisor, can certainly go into more technical information in a few minutes. 3 of the structures we're actually going to dig below. These structures run from Magra all the way down to Brace Road. In a few minutes, I'll give you the actual list of the structures in your areas. The 3 structures that we are digging down are the Union Pacific Railroad overcrossing right at Newcastle, Newcastle Interchange, and also Weimar Cross in the Colfax-Weimar area. Again, the current standard of 16.6 inches that is not met by any of these structures. We do have one structure which I believe is 14 feet 8 inches. That is our lowest, and then most of them run into the 15.6 range. One of the big reasons is commerce and military. The Federal Highway Administration said you need to get these structures risen. This is a military corridor. If, heaven forbid, we needed to get large numbers of equipment to the port for national defense, at this point they would have to be detoured onto local roads because they don't make the clearance. So that's one of the main reasons we're doing it. Also commerce, $4.7 million an hour goes over Interstate 80. We need to keep that commerce rolling. Anything with a height restriction cannot make it at this point without entering onto your local roads, and that's something we need to stop. So the main focus as far as your constituents is it's going to keep these permit loads off your local roads and out of your communities. Benefits, again, is the safety. It's not the safest thing to take a permit load and put it into a neighborhood. And so we're going to start preventing that by doing this project. Like I said, $4.7 million an hour of commerce, which that's a lot of money every hour that going in and out of the state of California. We need to keep that moving. It is a short-term pain. We won't sugarcoat that. We are going to be closing these structures, the crossing themselves, from 17 to 22 days, depending on the structure. Interstate 80 will have to be closed 2 nights from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. per structure, not counting the dig downs. That's for the 6 structures that are actually going to get risen. We'll have lane closures for the ones that we dig down. So there is going to be some impacts, but we're here to make sure that we lessen that impact. Here are our crossings. Our furthest west is Brace Road. Probably our most economic impact is a horseshoe bar, and I've already done foots to the pavement in the horseshoe bar area with the local businesses, handing out my business card, making sure they're aware of me. I am scheduled to meet with the Loomis City Council, and we have public workshops to make sure that the local residents are aware of what we plan on doing. Nobody will be unaware by the time I get done. As you can notice, I talk a lot, so they will know. Magra is going to be our very first structure. It is actually in the contract to go first. It is going to have our longest detour. It is going to detour using the 2049 corridor, and they're going to get back on at Bell Road. So it does impact the Auburn area as well. Primary amount of the detour is in Nevada County. I do have a public workshop in Nevada City, Grass Valley, so they're aware. That is only 2 nights. So it is a very short-term detour, but that way, if somebody does call you and says, what in the world are they doing? You know. The main thing is going to be the local traffic. We're going to be closing these overcrossings. In many cases, we can leave the ramps open. In not all of the cases, we can. But there will be alternate routes available. We do have detours set up for each individual one. Locals will have their own little routes that they'll know how to get around. We have to give nice, clear, concise detours to people who are not familiar with the area. I am working with the local trucking companies and stuff in the area so they're aware and they can get around. So they're very much aware. We're also working with the trucking companies, so when we do 80 corridors, we minimize the number of trucks on these detours. First responders, we are working with them diligently to make sure we do not increase response times. And in one instance, we are actually going to pay to have a fire station that is normally unmanned will be manned 24/7 during the closures to make sure that we do not impact response times. We had a very dry winter, although it's raining right now. We don't want to have any impacts, negative impacts as far as emergency response, so we do work with first responders to make sure They're aware what's closed, what's open. Once that bridge is jacked up, we can't even let ambulances over it because it's obviously not safe. But they will know it before they get there, what's going on and how to get around it. Okay. Right now, we don't have a concrete schedule. We're still waiting on the contractor for that. Like I said, MAGRA is first. It will go first. We're looking at late May, early June. Probably June is going to be more of a likely target at this point because we do not have a schedule from the contractor. RGW from Livermore is the primary contractor on this project. And then, as you can see, we have pretty complicated maps, and I will be giving you handouts that gives so you can study the detours and give me any input that you might have. Taylor Road is going to be the primary truck detour when 80 is closed. It is the old 40. It's the best. It's the most logical place to put them, and with the least amount of impact. We do know there's a number of residents in the area. We are going to make sure that they are aware, and it is only from 11 o'clock at night to 5 o'clock in the morning. It's not during the day, okay? So Horseshoe Bar, again, is our probably the most economic impact, but we are working with the City of Loomis. I sat down with a couple of members of the City of Loomis just yesterday, and again, meeting with the town council so they're aware of what's going on and how we plan on lessening the impacts. One note to make is on our website, we have an open for business page on our Raise 80 website where the businesses can fill out a page and for free of charge get put onto our website. We do all the graphics work and everything for them, and it's just one element into making sure that we lessen the impacts to the community. And in Penryn, we've got King Road, Gallardi, the Union Pacific Railroad. We will not be touching the structure itself. We will be digging down. We cannot touch that structure. And because of the close proximity to Newcastle, it would make an unnatural dip, which could lead to hydroplaning. So we're going to make a smooth transition by digging down both of those. So if you do get that question, that would be the answer for that question. Weimar Cross, only the eastbound side does not make clearance. The others, because it is at a pitch, and because it's at an angle too, I believe. If we were to try to lift that, there was a potential for the structure actually breaking. So we're going to dig down. We're not going to take that chance. That's not something you gamble with. So we're going to go ahead and dig down, and it will only be the eastbound side. And then Magra, which will be our first, and that has our longest detour, which we discussed earlier. And you have my name, you have my phone number, and you have my email. If any of your constituents wants to get a hold of Caltrans, that's what I'm here for. And I'll let Ed Arborough go through.
Rochelle, I have a couple. I think there's a couple questions.
Certainly.
First of all, you're going to staff a fire station that's closed. Which fire district is that?
Yes.
Tuta?
Loomis.
It's in Loomis.
Yeah, it's
Loomis.
Okay.
It is in Loomis.
Okay. Thank you. And any other Director Nesbitt?
For both of you, actually. First of all, I understand the effort here. Going to all this trouble, why raise just a foot? Why not look at the future and say, what happens if the rigs get this much bigger or whatever? Why just 1 foot for all this trouble?
It's not really a foot. It's more than a foot. It's a minimum federal clearance requirement.
Right.
As part of the Federal Highway
How far are you
Administration.
actually raising the?
These are all going up to a minimum of 16.6. Some of these have to go up 18 inches. Some have to go up closer to 20 inches. We're meeting the federal standard. That's what we've been asked to do. So.
And what happens to the seismic resistance of this when you're cutting into the support? So obviously you're compromising the confinement of the reinforcement and everything else. What happens?
That's all taken care of as part of the design. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions from board members?
I had 2 general questions, if I may. One was where you did make the comment that these are each going to take 17 to 22 days.
Correct.
That's going to be consecutive. There won't be any duplication of that time, so we're looking at somewhere 150 days or something like that, one side or the other of that.
Per structure, it's 17 to 22 days.
Okay, and then a little broader question still, is this the first program of doing overcrossing changes, and will others need to be done up and down the interstate?
These are the
It's
last
not,
ones.
these are, at my understanding, these are the last ones. We've done this
The
type
last
of work.
ones.
We've done this type of work in other areas.
Okay.
Up on Highway 70 in Butte County, we've had to raise bridges. We've done some stuff up in District 2 also where we've raised bridges.
But Interstate 80 is okay the rest of the way,
That's my
except for these
understanding, yes.
9 overcrossings?
It was my understanding that I can't confirm this personally, but I have been told that these are the last structures on I-80 from New Jersey to California. This is it.
Thank you.
Director Nader?
I apologize, Mr. Chairman, this may have already been shared. What is the time frame of the entire work?
Actually, I didn't cover that, thank you. It's right now, because we don't have a schedule from the contractor, it's scheduled to end fall of next year. So 2 construction seasons. That could change depending on what we get from the contractor.
So hopefully, you're hoping to complete by fall of 2015.
We are scheduled to be completed fall of 2015.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
One question. First, I want to compliment you on your great PR. You really met with the town of Loomis and, as you mentioned, the business and everything. Concern I have, though, is if you're starting with MAG or whatever, that first one, my understanding is on the schedule that you would be in Loomis when school is not in session, so that sometime between June and August, you will do the Loomis bridges.
We don't know that yet.
So you might be doing it when school's in session.
There is the potential. At this point, until we hear from the contractor, we don't know. There is the potential there. When we did the outreach initially 5 years ago, the community of Loomis stated they wanted us to be they wanted Horseshoe Bar to be the first structure of the second year. Let the contractor get all the bugs out of the system so it'd be quick and smooth. Economic times have changed. We have expressed that to the contractor, but until we have a contractor's schedule, we could just, at this point, speculate where Horseshoe Bar is going to be.
So in the contract, then it wasn't specified that Horseshoe Bar, King, and, well, basically Horseshoe Bar, but King Road also, would be done during the summer when school's not in session. That's not one of the requirements.
We gave them a sample schedule, is to my understanding, and I believe King Road was in the first year. Sam?
Sam?
Yeah, King was in the second season.
King is also. I'm sorry. This is our resident engineer, Sam.
Hi, Sam.
Hi, how you doing?
Glad to see you moving to Loomis.
Good. The schedule that we put together for the design that the contractor bid on was Magra first, and then moved down to Penryn, and then Bryce, and then Gallardi. Gallardi was last in the first season because of a water pipeline. And then the second season, the project, Horseshoe Bar, Newcastle, well, I take that back, Horseshoe Bar, Weimar, Newcastle, and then King.
So what we're looking at then is not this year for Horseshoe Bar and King, but another year from.
That is correct.
Okay.
Potentially, yes.
Okay.
Until we get that contractor's schedule.
Yes, he has verbally said that he was going to follow our schedule, but until they actually submit something in writing and get an approved schedule, then we won't know.
Okay, thank you.
We don't want to give a false sense of security to that at all.
And then now Director Russell.
Hi, I just have one question. You mentioned the impact will be on Taylor, which I'm assuming will also be Pacific through Rockland, because that strip, do you think that will be impacted at all, or just Taylor? That's it? Okay. Just wanted to
We'll bring him
clarify.
back on at Sierra College Boulevard. so
Perfect.
that- Yeah.
Okay,
Rockland
just wanted to
shouldn't
make
be
sure there
affected.
wasn't, okay.
No, I'd have to pay with my grandmother if we did that.
That would be tough.
That would be bad.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Just to understand, help you all understand a little bit of the construction work on this. What will happen on this is the contractor, when they get ready to raise these bridges, they'll set a lane closure a little bit early, get staged in there. We're going to hold them to a very tight schedule. They have to present us full schedule basically every 15 minutes where they're going to be on this, along with contingency plans on if we have a major incident someplace and suddenly had to open the road, how quickly could they shore up this bridge and get it ready. But what we're doing is the lightest bridge weighs 700 tons, if you can imagine that. That's the lightest one. That's Magra that we have to lift up. So they're going to cut these, have jacking systems. The jacks will have a throw of 6 to 8 inches. Every quarter inch that they raise them up, they have to shim them in place. And we don't know exactly how fast that's going to go. We're expecting 2 nights. They have to shim them in place. After 6 or 8 inches, they're going to have to either have another jacking system set up to start up or reset their second set of jacks. At the end of the night, they now have to shore and stabilize this bridge to make sure it's going to stand freely as they come in to start to do the reinforcements and set up for it until we get up to the height they need to. The overcrossings, at the same time, we've got to go build new abutments and raise those, raise the road profile coming up to the bridge that's been elevated, put in all new guardrail and everything else. So in 17 to 22 days, they're going to be very busy. As part of this, and taking some lessons learned from a lot of other contracts, we started writing communications plans, very detailed ones, for emergency response on contracts like Gold Run 3 that we did a few years ago, Truckee River Canyon, Lincoln Bypass, the Fix I-5 project we did. We're doing one right now also for the WX and the design build. But basically, we're going to outreach with all the local emergency services agencies. We're going to have full contact lists. We will have communications teams that meet regularly to discuss ongoing issues or if issues are developing and what we can do to help mitigate those. We've been very successful doing this in the past and reaching out and making sure that the CHP, CDF, local sheriff's departments, local fire agencies are all on board with what's going on. And they understand fully the schedule and the impacts. They can plan for their alternate routes to be able to run. They can plan for potentially staging equipment someplace else to help on their response time. Maybe they have to put an ambulance on the far side to be able to respond faster, which we've seen in other instances. When we run the Magra detour on Highway 20, because that is about 56 miles long, maintenance will have pre-stationed equipment up on Highway 20. We'll have a lot of additional changeable message signs, the portable changeable message sign boards to slow people down and remind them. We will have message boards out on these alternate routes to remind them what's going on. So we've been successful in doing this in the past, and we think we can be successful again by partnering with a contractor. The big thing for them is they're going to give us a schedule, and it's going to be very tight for how they plan to do this work, and we're going to hold them to that. If they get off schedule, then if they're going to have to button up and come back the next night to finish. But we're going to make sure the roadway's open by 5 a.m. I think I can take lane closures about 9 p.m., which allows them to get in that lane closure and start staging everything until 11 p.m. When they shut it down, they can move in fully and start to jack the bridge. So a lot of this is we're waiting on the contractor's submittals. I know that we have a big meeting with them next week to have our pre-construction meeting and talk about safety and those things, and that's one of my roles, is to come in and talk about the expectations and work with Sam Van Dell, our resident engineer, and his boss, Carl Brexa, is behind me. The three of us, along with Tim Smith, who's my partner in doing safety, we will be on this contract continually to make sure it's right, along with Carl's staff and the structure staff. We have very experienced staff doing this, too. That's actually a comfort for all of us. Sam has a lot of experience. Our structures rep on this has an immense amount of experience, including in private industry. He knows how this work's supposed to go, and he will hold RGW to the line to get this done right. So if you had some other questions for me that I might be able to answer for you.
Yeah, Director Nesbitt.
So are you cutting the supports at the bottom or as they join the bridge at the top? Are you severing the support from the bottom?
They're not at the very bottom. They're cut a little ways up and then jacked from there, and then we have to put a sleeve in place and tie all the rebar back together, and pour new concrete in there and everything else.
I'd be interested in seeing in the design, but prior to moving to Auburn, I was on the cutting edge of research in earthquake-resistant design. It sounds to me like you're building in a plastic hinge in that system.
And I don't have the structures rep here today. He would be better. Yeah, Kim?
Did you have anything?
Sent me a note that said the seismic integrity of the existing structure. I can't see without my shaders.
Ma'am?
Kim,
Stand up.
We're rebroadcast on cable, so people won't hear you.
So I actually sent Glenn, our structure rep, your question from earlier, and he said the seismic integrity of the existing structures are adequate for the current service demand. So what they're basically going to do is they're going to extend that. They've got specific clamps. I don't know. I'm sure you're familiar with certain ones that don't damage that integrity. There's a redundant system so that
It is maintained.
Yeah.
The seismic is maintained.
we can get you in touch with Glenn, and he can explain that. Okay.
Okay,
Because it goes against kind of some of the things I learned.
we can do that.
Any other
Another
questions?
question?
And one other question, realizing that this is probably the low bidder, have they done this bridge lifting, easy, bridge lifting before?
Actually, it's not the low bidder. The low bidder was non-responsive, so it's the second bidder. Yes, they have. This company has experience doing this work. It's a matter now for them to plan how to do this unique work. I will tell you, we've got very, very tight timelines to do this as part of this project, much tighter than we normally do. The last one we did up on Garden Highway, we took 60 days to raise the bridge. This is on Highway 70, just north of Oroville. So a lot of this has to do with their planning effort and their coordination, not with just the bridge contractor, but with their dirt contractor, paving contractor, to get all this work done simultaneously in 17 days. That's the big thing for us, and that's the big thing we need to see on their schedule, is not just the bridge work, but the dirt work and the paving work and the guardrail and all the rest of it that goes with it.
We also have a disincentive incentive clause in this contract, and I'm sure that's probably one of your questions that are getting ready to come up. If they meet or finish in advance of what the scheduled amount of time is for each structure, they get money. If they go past it, it costs them. So that's usually pretty reassuring to your constituents as well. There is an incentive disincentive clause for each individual structure.
And when you raise the bridge, particularly Horseshoe Bar, you're gonna bring it up. There's a slope currently down onto the area there. That's gonna be increased. Are you going to, will that become too great of a grade there?
No, the profiles will be corrected to meet our design standards for Caltrans. All right, so we're not just going to take and shoot them straight down a foot and a half. No, the profiles will have to all be
Is there a
corrected.
crosswalk there?
Yeah, and we have to. Well, that's another thing for the crosswalk. All the ADA requirements have to be met.
Don't let him get you.
I know he's not going to get me. All right.
Okay, thank you,
He's
sir.
not going to get me. No.
Any other questions from directors? And I assume American Medical Response, ambulance providers are all in the loop as well.
We will bring them in as part of this process. That's something that we look to the local sheriffs and fire departments to help bring on board, along with the local record companies.
Oh, yeah.
We want to talk to the tow companies. If we have an incident on our detours, we've got to know how to clean that up quickly and how to get that opened in the fastest possible way.
Okay.
And we've got experience working with the CHP, and there's actually, rules now in the CBC that allow us to, basically, if there's a fender bender, to tell them, you go up the road and you pull off over here, outside our area, outside our detour, and we'll send the police to you. You're not going to sit here and block traffic. So all those provisions are already under discussion.
All right. Did you have a question?
Yes, I would assume that as soon as the schedule's available, you'll make that available to us.
The very first place, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
And obviously, you want to get that message out to as many people as possible.
The very first location that information will be released to the general public is raise80.com. Everybody that has signed up, there's an incentive to signing up for the email and text blasts, is you are the first to know. So your local media is already signing up for that. I highly encourage you to do so as well, or have your staff member do so. And within a couple hours of it being released through raise80.com, then we will do press releases and notifying the general public. But raise80.com will be the very first location where that will be released. I will certainly have you guys in the loop as well, but raise80.com will be first.
I assume this is a very expensive process, and so with new overcrossings that you're building, like, for example, out on 99, there was just one done at Alberta,
And we have one in construction.
are
right
you
now.
building those higher now, so you don't, won't hopefully,
Yeah, oh, yes.
it'd be a long time before you have to
Yes.
do bridge raisings again? Good, I'm glad to hear that.
These are all older, primarily older structures, and a lot of times the standard is, let's just build a new one. And it's really not necessary. These structures are fine. They're good structures. They're serving the community well. So we're reusing what we already have. We're reusing our resources, and it's a better use of taxpayer dollars than let's just demolition. Could you imagine how long it takes to build a structure if we did that as well, because the impacts to the community? But if we just demolish all these and start it over again, it would be a huge price tag, and not to mention a huge inconvenience to your local community. So reusing what we already have that is working just fine is also a great service to the taxpayers.
Director Trevus, you had another comment?
Yeah, small one, that if during this project, you'll be using local roads for bypass roads. And is there something in the contract that, to the extent they're damaged at all, that they will be repaired as part of this contract? Or they just go to Placer County to fix?
Or the town.
One of you has to
Or
do
the
that.
towns, yeah.
I have to make them get up.
It might be that there isn't any, but that has occurred in some areas.
Yeah, my name's Carl Brexa. I'm the area construction engineer here. I'm Sam's boss, as mentioned earlier. No, in general, when we don't have a clause, we look at the road and the shape it's in. We'll do an assessment before. But while we're running the detour, that's about the only time that we go out there and do anything with it. So it's kind of one of those things where with the local entities, we run our detours there when we're doing our work on the freeway. They run their detours onto our facilities. It's a mutual thing, and there's nothing in the contract that puts the onus on the contractor for bringing the roads back to the state of repair that they were.
And this is also a minimal timeline. We're talking a couple of nights per structure. We're not talking about 6 months of running on. If we're running traffic on the county roads for 6 months consecutively, I'm sure there would be other discussion. But we're talking about a couple nights per structure.
Yeah, I'm sure there will not be any damage whatsoever in running all the big rigs over it. I just wondered if there was something in there, just out of the slight possibility something happens.
I'll help Carl out just a little bit here.
He did pretty well.
As the situation is now, those oversized trucks are already using those local roads to bypass those structures that are too low. So in a way, there's a little bit more pain in the short term to get these structures fixed, but then we won't have the ongoing impacts of those big trucks getting off the freeway on those local roads. So.
Thank you, Celia. We also have a outreach to the truckers to minimize the number of trucks using this detour. It's only 6 hours long. It behooves them to hold back, clock their sleep time. We actually have a cooperative agreement with other states in the I-80 corridor to burn their CMS boards to notify truck drivers all the way back to Utah, which is a good decision point. It's their final decision point. Either I head south or I keep heading towards California. So we can work with the state of Utah to burn their CMS boards, letting them know their
Rochelle,
detours.
Burn a CMS board. Could you explain what that means?
I'm starting to talk like an engineer, aren't I? Actually light up the CMS boards that will state that there's a detour.
Changeable message sign.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you, Celia.
All right.
It's because this goes out to the public.
I didn't used to talk like this, Celia, did I, when we first met? The engineers have got me. But yes, the changeable message signs, the great big boards that we all see on the freeway, we have a cooperative agreement with the different departments of transportation, I almost did it again, that states that they will cooperate with us if we have a big detour that's going to impact. They will go ahead and light up their changeable message sign in advance of that decision point, so the truck driver can make a decision. We have the California Trucking Association and the National Trucking Association on board, so they already have a series of advertisements letting the truckers know that this is coming. We also have Road Dog Radio, which is a dedicated satellite radio station for truckers that has signed up to do regular blasts when we have the closures, so they can let the truck drivers know what the impacts are, especially the one with the 56-mile detour, but for all of them, because it behooves them to log their sleep rather than to get into a detour.
Alrighty. I think that's the end of the questions from the board. Is there anyone in the audience has a question? Seeing none, thank you so much. Go forth and do good work quickly.
Thank you, sir.
And we will coordinate with Caltrans and make sure that the board and the jurisdictions are informed on the schedule as soon as that comes out.
All right, thank you. We'll now move to item J, temporary termination of I-80 eastbound carpool lane in South Placer County.
We've missed one item ahead of that.
Oh, well, what the heck? It goes without saying. Yeah, well, go ahead, let's do I then.
Yes, good morning, Chair Holmes, members of the board. This item is to adopt our final amendment of this year's overall work program and budget. As I always mention, to start out with the budget balances, I don't believe I've ever brought the board a budget that didn't balance, but I think that's important to note. This amendment highlights a couple of things. There's some redistribution of rural planning assistance dollars. There's an update of hours and expenditures on the airport land use comprehensive plan, which was more time consuming and expensive than we anticipated. This adds the funding for the cost scope and schedule for the I-80 Canyon Way, Crispin Cider Works analysis. And there is also a pass-through of funds that was done at the request of Caltrans and the California Association of Councils of Governments, or CalCog, for some educational sessions at the Regional Issues Forum. So with that, staff requests your approval.
Okay, any questions from board members? Anyone in the audience have any questions regarding this item? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for approval.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded to approve the item. All those in favor, will the clerk please call the roll? Yes.
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 All righty, thank you. Now we will move to item J, temporary termination of I-80 eastbound carpool lane in South Placer County.
Yes, this is a follow-up to your last month's board meeting, wherein the board requested we look at the possibility of terminating the I-80 eastbound carpool lane at Eureka Road to allow for another lane for the merge movements and the merge movements that go on at Highway 65 in response to the backups that we're seeing there while we move forward with the 8065 interchange improvements, which may take quite a while based on funding and the process. So in any case, on attachment 1 on page 26 shows the letter that we provided to Caltrans, and then on page 27 is their response dated in February, stating that they had looked at this and conferred with Federal Highway Administration, and they didn't see that there would be much of a difference in traffic congestion as a result of the early termination of that HOV lane. We took this to our technical advisory committee, and those are mostly your jurisdiction engineers, and the feeling was this seemed a bit counterintuitive and suggested that we needed to look into this a little bit further. We did talk to Fair and Peers, who did a very, as it turns out, a very cursory analysis at the request of Caltrans because, quite frankly, there was no budget associated with it, and that's what they provided to Caltrans was just a very cursory glance at this. What we'd like to do is have them take a more detailed look at it, and because the gut feeling, if you will, on the part of engineering staff is there really is an opportunity there that we need to investigate and provide better information to Caltrans and FHWA that they may revise their opinion based on that. And I will note that Jim Calkins from Caltrans District 3 Operations is here in the audience and is happy to answer any questions on how Caltrans came up with their opinion that's provided in attachment 2. This is not an action item. What we're letting the board know is that we're looking into this further and working with Fair and Peers to provide a better analysis, a more complete analysis.
Okay. Director Euler.
Yes, please. As the fellow who kind of rattled this cage in the first place, I would like to ask a question of whomever would be appropriate at this point. Please, yeah. So it sounds like what we're dealing with right now is shall we say, a difference of opinion amongst experts. We have some folks who think, yeah, maybe if it lane was open and available to people, you'd have more people in that lane. Bypassing the mix-up there at 65, you have some folks perhaps on your staff who are saying probably not. My question is, what does it hurt if we try?
Well, we wouldn't want to try it unless we thought it would work first, right?
Okay.
We don't want to just try it for no reason. It would set a precedent. There are more parties involved than just the FHWA who says no at this time, and Caltrans who says no, but we are willing to, of course, work with you guys, and because we're all partners here. There's the Air Quality Board. HOV lanes are driven by air quality, not by congestion relief. So the Air Quality Board is a big player in this. They're not going to be excited at all about losing a mile of HOV lane. You know, there's a big interest in greenhouse gases now. And so,
Sure.
as insignificant as that might be, one direction, 1 mile, the greenhouse gas people, ECOS, all the environmental people, Air Quality Board, and SACOG as well.
And I guess to counter that, I guess my point is that since we that actually live here and travel that on a daily basis, we kind of think that if that's available to more cars, that furthest left lane that's currently diamond and restricted, if that's available to more cars, you'll have better traffic movement through there across all lanes and thereby reduce. And so my point, I guess, kind of is if we try it and it doesn't work, isn't it fairly easily enough reestablished? If we try it and it doesn't work, then that's great. It worked. And while we're working on the long-term fix, we've at least created this additional capacity. We have better movement. We have better public safety. We have better air quality. We have better all the rest. We can't really disprove the negative, though. If you say we just don't think it'll work and we don't try something, it's a little tough to disprove that negative.
I understand your question, and it's a valid one. The protocol for Caltrans, who's in charge of taking care of I-80, is to study it first and figure out if it will or will not work. That's the way we do business. We don't just experiment on the highway because drivers are used to driving that corridor. We don't experiment. Lives are at stake here. So instead, we prefer to look at it. We have a lot of liability here. If we make this move and it goes south on us, like you said the potential would be, who is liable? Caltrans is. So we want to make a smart move the first time before we go, and just for the sake of trying it, it would be an experiment. And it's for us as the owners operators, it's risky. So with your permission, we'll go ahead and we'll see what Fair and Piers has to say. Actually, at this time, I'd like to have Fair and Piers, if you don't mind, Celia, look into, since they're going to be the ones, and since the onus is on you guys, to have them contact Air Quality and SACOG and get those opinions. And I will work with FHWA for you.
Yeah, as you were speaking, it's clear that we're probably going to need a follow-up air quality analysis
Yes.
to support this in order to get
it's a
the
big deal.
permissions from those who get to make those decisions. But I think that it sounds like there's a consensus about delving into this further.
Sure.
Yeah. Director Nesbitt.
I was just following up on Mr. Euler's comments that if really is driven more by greenhouse gases and air pollution than congestion, relieving some of that congestion also relieves some of that pollution. So I would think that was,
That's true.
Yeah, that's kind of an equal thing, understanding the liability issue. But I agree with Mr. Euler. We don't think it'll work, and we're not going to try it. Therefore, you just sort of prove it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy on that. So I'd appreciate it if we look a little bit further on
No
it,
problem.
since we do have experts with dissenting opinions.
Certainly.
Sylvia, did you get his name?
Oh, we know Jim.
Oh, okay. All right. Just want to make sure. I think we're going to get to know him a little better, Jim.
Actually, I know each and every one of you now because the roll call was said like 500 times.
All right.
Speaking of state requirements.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mr. Holmes?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'd like to see the study. I may be the disagreeing voice here, but having traveled that, the problem there is lanes on the right-hand side. I think there's 5 lanes, so lanes 4 and 5 are the really congested ones because they're trying to get on 65. Lanes 3, 4, and the HOV lane 5 really aren't that congested. You can move as long as you get over there. You can move through them. So you know, the problem is on the right-hand side. I don't know if making, since my wife's always in the car, I like the HOV lane, but I don't know, even if that wasn't an HOV lane, it's not going to improve the flow on 80 merging on the 65.
Bingo, very good, very good, outstanding comment.
Mr. Chairman. If I may, in response to my
Remain calm.
colleague, in response to my colleague from Loomis, if I may, the whole notion here was the conflict created with the on-ramp action at Eureka and what happens with those people trying to get over onto Taylor as you're merging on Eureka at the same time that you have folks positioning themselves to get over towards 65. And so the observation was made in our last meeting that perhaps if people who were intending to be through traffic to Loomis, say, or Reno or Auburn or any place in between, if they had the ability to get themselves out of all of that conflicting traffic movement earlier by taking advantage of the number one lane back at Eureka, you have just taken a substantial amount of the traffic that is currently combined to the numbers 2 and 3 lanes, given it the opportunity to move further left, thereby creating more access for people merging on at Eureka to get over and reducing then that conflict further down at 65. So that was the issue. Yes, you have the congestion in those lanes, and that's kind of why we're saying that perhaps if you had the additional lane capacity open earlier in that travelway, you would free up some of that congestion down at 65. That's what we're asking. Yeah, so that's what we're looking at really is if it's open back at Eureka, can we free up that congestion that right now takes place right there? And it's almost as though you have a significant traffic impact right there at Eureka. It will briefly free up and then it hits again at 65. And so that's why we're saying perhaps if we have that lane. That's
All right.
And I would underscore, this is not going to, even if this does show the promise that we hope it does with more analysis, we need to redo the 8065 interchange. This is just a Band-Aid to try and get us through to the bigger project.
But at the same time, we know, I think those of us up here know that a significant part of fixing 8065 is local participation. Mm-hmm. And in order to encourage local participation, we local elected officials need to be able to show to our constituents that we're doing everything we can within our power and the dollars already available to us to make for easier travel for everybody before we go out to them and ask them for more money to help fix the existing problem. And so I think as part of the broader overall outreach to our constituents, if they see us utilizing tools like this that might be available, it may very well help in that campaign that we are all going to be called upon to mount in order to raise the money for that ultimate fix.
Okay. Yeah, that's
All right.
a very good point.
Any other comments on this issue? Fine, thank you. We will now move to the Executive Director's report. Ms. McAdam and I, thank you for coming. Thanks for all your... Celia and I were in D.C. last week with our meeting with, what is it? Oh, meeting with federal representatives. We met, I have to say that our federal advocate, Santi Esposito, and his son, Michael Esposito, are, we're well served. Those guys really know what they're doing. They know all the intricacies and ins and out of government, federal government. Ms. Santi Esposito was the chief counsel for the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure for the House of Representatives from 1981 to 1998. He served as the counsel for the House Committee on Budget from 1977 to 1981. So he really knows how government works or doesn't work. And so we were very blessed to have him with us in the meetings because he came up with some pretty good discussion points that really hit home, not only with us, but with the people we were meeting with. And with that, I'll turn it over to Celia.
Well, I'll provide a couple of highlights because some of the meetings were more to talk to our representatives about our projects and encourage them to move forward with the federal transportation bill reauthorization, because in the short term, that could affect us the most, because if it is not reauthorized, the funding will stop, possibly as soon as June. And those are for the jurisdictions doing CMAQ projects, doing regional surface transportation projects, which is road rehab type things. Any kind of federal money for transportation will stop, and that has huge impacts for us locally. So we wanted to make sure to encourage that. They are looking at a 5 to 6 year extension. They hope to have a draft out in April, so that seems promising. Of course, the big problem is, where's the money going to come from? And that seems to be the linchpin that is probably going to take this all the way down to the wire. And I personally would not be surprised to see continuing resolutions, as we have in the past, to kick this can down the road at least past the election in 2014. And that really was underscored by what we heard back in D.C. We did also meet with the folks from the Tiger program, and one of the notes that I made that I think is notable is that you have about a 95% chance of being rejected. It is a really, really tough program that it underscored the recommendations that I've made to this board about not pursuing those dollars, because we would not get them based on the projects we have. They are not competitive based on what we heard. So that's an important piece of information. Now, we could be developing projects that would be competitive, and those could be, certainly the 8065 interchange, possibly the Placer Parkway. We also met with the group from TPA, which is, and I don't have what that acronym is for, but it's essentially a loan program that allows you to pledge local dollars, whether those are future federal dollars, or whether that's a sales tax, or whether it's other local dollars that are loaned at a very low rate. And it was very interesting to meet with them, because we actually met with the deputy director, Mark Polston, who's very high up in this, and really got a good feel for the possibility of using this program for. We talked about the security for those loans, and what we have currently, which is mostly transportation impact fees, are not necessarily the best backing, which we've known all along, but it's possible, combined with other sources of backing, things like a transportation sales tax, pledges of future federal dollars, should we really have some of those due to reauthorization, other sources. It is another tool that we can put in our back pocket, and got a really good glimpse behind the scenes on how that really works. So all in all, it was essentially a one-day whirlwind trip, and I think we got a lot out of it at, frankly, a much smaller dollar than we've paid in the past for our advocacy trips. I wanted to mention a couple of other things to the board. We have been moving forward on the Crispin Cider I-80 Canyon Way issue. We met with the GoBiz people with the governor's office to try and figure out a way of funding the improvements that are needed for those large trucks to access Crispin Cider without getting cited by the CHP. And we did come up with an idea that works with Caltrans, and so the governor's office is going to contact Caltrans directly. I will be following up to see if that's successful, and see if we need to go to a Plan B. So that is moving forward. I also want to mention that the California Transportation Commission is having a town hall meeting in South Lake Tahoe on April 7th and 8th. And the first day is going to be largely done by the Tahoe Transportation District, our sister agency in the Tahoe Basin. And then in the second day, there are going to be a series of presentations, including I will be doing one on rail and why there is not rail service to the Tahoe area, and talk about some of the history with the Reno Rail. There is my counterpart from El Dorado County will be doing a presentation on the Beta Basin, in the study that talks about where the people coming to the Tahoe Basin, where they're coming from, and the impacts of those trips. And Dan Landon from Nevada County will also be talking about the bicycling aspects in the it's the triangle, the resort triangle, the report that was done to consolidate all the bike plans up there, and talking about that. So board members who may be interested in attending, let me know and we'll make arrangements, but it's a good chance to have essentially a more informal discussion with the California Transportation Commission members who control a lot of money, and that's an important connection to make. So with that, that concludes my report.
All right, any questions for Celia?
Celia, wasn't the
I got it.
your presentation up there about the rail and why it hasn't been? And didn't that continue then with and what can be done to overcome those?
Oh, absolutely. I'm putting together the report now, and I'm
Add that chapter, right?
well, yes, what we need to do to make this happen.
Shoot,
Very good.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
Since I serve on LAFCO, there's been several annexations that are coming up now in western Placer County, both in Roseville and in Lincoln. And my concern is that we talk about Highway 65 and the interchange with 80, and as these subdivisions come in and more people are added, some of them will be traveling that. Do we get any type, when the EIR is presented, do we review that to see if there's any funding that would come for the interchange?
There are funding programs in place through Sparta and what we call the Tier 2 program. Now, the 8065 interchange is only a small part of that. It is, there is, out of the $485 million Tier 2 fee that is paid by those new growth areas, only about $5 million is earmarked.
But they are paying some?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
And they're also paying towards the widening of Highway 65 as well as the Placer Parkway.
All righty. Any other questions for the Executive Director? Okay, there are some informational items for your purview or review, as the case may be. And our next regularly scheduled PCTPA board meeting is April 23rd. And with that, we will adjourn. Thank you.